How's
Once you do the
REA
music off,
going?
otherwise we might have copyright problems.
Yeah.
Danny, I thought this was you singing.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, that was back in my earlier days.
All right. Should we kick things off?
I think so. We're just doing intros to start with, so I think if any stragglers, we'll just catch up.
Yeah, great. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. My name is Tess O'Brien. I'm the Communications Manager for Omneo, and it's my pleasure to be moderating today's session. Today's not about COVID-19, although it is going to be very relevant to today's topic. What today's really about is the pitfalls of going all in on a traditional e-commerce strategy without a broader picture in mind. So we're going to kick things off with a brief introduction to each of our panelists, and then we'll dive into the meat of the discussion, and at the end we'll have some time for some Q&A. So pop any questions that come up in the chat and we'll try and address what we can at the end of the webinar. So joining us today, we have Shannon Luxford. Shannon is the Chief Commercial Officer of men's retailer Rodd&Gunn and has over 20 years experience leading retail strategy and management across Australia, New Zealand, the USA, UK and Europe. Shannon has led the digital transformation for brands such as Gap, Guess, Aldo, Tummy, MJ Bale and Rodd&Gunn. Thanks for joining us, Shannon.
Good morning, thank you.
We've also got Danny Phillips from software company Omneo and customer experience agency Arcade. In the past, Danny has lectured at RMIT University and General Assembly on the nature of relationships between customer and brand. More recently, he can be found heading up the customer experience strategy for brands like APG & Co, Paz Group, Glue Store, Decuba and Treasury Wine Estate through his CX agency Arcade, and developing the Omneo product suite, a CX platform dedicated to creating smarter customer profiles for better brand experience. And last but not least, we have Nick Haddon, Emarsys own. Nick is the commercial lead for the Emarsys Australia and New Zealand and has worked with the likes of City Beach, Temple & Webster and Adore Beauty to engage customers and deliver business outcomes across a myriad of channels. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Tess.
I'm going to start things off by saying a big thanks to iMedia Online Retail Summit for supporting this webinar. Their event is happening in August and is the best industry event in the region. Request your invite today by clicking the link in the chat to avoid missing out, and tell them Emarsys sent you. Okay, Nick, would you like to start things off by giving us a bit of background on how Emarsys is viewing the current retail environment?
Yeah, look, I think just going back on the iMedia event, look, firstly, it'd be great to see everyone again. I know it's been a fair while, and look, it's really important to catch up because we are such a tightly knit community, and something that we've developed as an initiative and to really help our customers, partners, and look, again, the wider business community during these challenging times from a global and local perspective was CC Insight. So essentially we developed CC Insight with the goal of really putting up-to-date consumer data in the hands of those business owners, economists and policymakers to give them actionable insights needed to navigate through the current circumstances. So look, for everyone here and on the call and those listening to a recording, I do recommend that you jump on, check it out and have a look. Essentially we're surfacing consumer trends that can be used to understand and visualize and exchange ideas, and on the top of that, look, we're continuously looking to get partners to contribute different data points, ideas, knowledge, look, even blogs and articles, so we can help those businesses mitigate, the economic impact that we're faced with. So I do believe that we have an email address up there, and I'm going to read it out because I've always wanted to do this: community@ccinsights.org.
Great. Okay, so that's a good overview of what Emarsys is seeing. Let's start off by setting the scene. So there's going to be a lot of brands out there that have recently closed or scaled back their physical stores and moved their operations to focus online, or e-commerce managers that are wondering where to next. Shannon, how would you describe the what traditional e-commerce is? Let's start there.
Well, I think, I mean, there's plenty of e-commerce managers on today's call, so I think everyone's got a good handle of how e-com has run traditionally in retail, and it's been very much, I guess, a collaboration between the marketing and the e-commerce functions, and it's probably sat in a little bit of isolation traditionally compared to the retail operations teams out in the stores. And I think what this COVID crisis is potentially going to give us the opportunity and will be the stimulus is to look at e-commerce and look at overall brand retailing with a more sort of collective commerce approach, and retail really being brought into that discussion. And so I think there's, it's quite exciting to try and get a bit of a shift in the culture of businesses to be more collaborative and for more departments to play an active role, but also an active interest in how e-commerce can drive their business forward post-crisis.
Yeah, I think you're right, Shannon. I think I reckon that the reason why e-commerce departments within brands have sort of ended up where they've ended up is because it was born out of this concept of a website being an online brochure or an online catalog originally. So sort of born out of the marketing function, very much about sort of acquisition and that sort of process. Whereas now it's very much a retail function, and for many brands right now, it's their only retail function. And the disconnect between the retail operations side of the business and the e-commerce side of the business in some brands is poles apart. And I think combining those things back together, as you mentioned, is really, really key. Seeing that the website is the extra few square meters on every store, as opposed to being just another store or a different channel. They're an extension of each other. So I think prioritizing those features that generate only direct online sales on the website has sort of held a lot of e-commerce agencies back, and e-commerce brands back as well. What do you think? What else are you seeing out there, Nick?
Yeah, look, Danny, I think that what we've seen is this rapid burst of growing alignment across the value chain in e-commerce businesses and retail altogether. And look, certainly from speaking, Shannon, with you and also with you, Danny, it's quite evident that there's a few initiatives which are now taking place, which we might not have seen previously. And look, firstly, it's taking a look at those metrics businesses are using to report on and what they're actually expecting from the digital marketing and the e-commerce teams to deliver and generate for the business. I think the execution of the marketing strategy is regularly based on reports from marketing tools rather than being measured with tools that are really focused on business imperatives. And look, I think everyone has seen the speed of the changing customers' expectations. So for those retailers, look, hats off by accelerating with the consumer demands and also providing that more connected, personalized and rewarding experience, which in exchange, you are getting more share of mind, share of wallet, and also largely a lot of their data. But again, Shannon, I know that you've talked a little bit about this with me, so I'd love to learn from you.
So look, I think in terms of customer data platform, that was a key decision for us to start the partnership with Emarsys and their CDP, because we didn't have some of those metrics available to us, and they'll really guide us as we move through the next phase of this crisis, and very much into the now that we're operating with, and then how that will improve our strategies and the accuracy of our strategies and the return on those as we kind of get through the next few months and then start to look forward at what does this new world look like. So, I think it's really important to kind of have metrics in the business that can be shared across all of those, those departments that are pulling from various different sources, both in-store marketing and obviously online in terms of e-commerce.
And what are the strategies that you're doing now? What are the things that you're changing, not sort of preparing for the new world, but what are you actually doing right now to make sure that you can leverage what parts of the business are still functioning, how you've been able to pivot what you're doing to get things working, and what should other retailers be looking at doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give away all our secrets, otherwise my boss will have some words to say. But look, I think I can certainly share with you some key themes of and some advice out to e-commerce managers of what they potentially should be looking at now. And I think the first one is truly understanding what your business priorities and challenges are beyond your department, beyond your role, and getting a really broad and in-depth understanding of where is your business currently at, what are the risks in the month ahead, what's keeping your boss up at night, and how can e-commerce play a role in actually providing a solution or bridging a gap, or looking at it in a new and innovative way, where you've got this platform that's operating during the period. How are you leveraging that platform in terms of your e-commerce to start preparing how you're going to move through this crisis? I think there's every retailer will certainly be having the challenge of stock, and stock that has been brought in for a season that is short as it anyhow in terms of winter in the Australian market, and so everyone's going to be sitting on some excess stock over the coming months. So another thing I'd be looking at is marketplaces. Is there additional marketplaces that you can plug into if you're already up and running with a PIN provider that could potentially help that? I think click and collect is going to find a whole new meaning in the market, and look, some brands have sort of sat at a kind of a smaller percentage of transactions being click and collect. I think we're going to see, as we move through this crisis and we move into loosened or easing of restrictions, there's still going to be a very large portion of people that are going to be nervous about going into a mall. And I think people will probably want to minimize their times in those spaces as well. And so click and collect needs to come front and center for two reasons. One, to be able to leverage that stock that's sitting in those existing stores that have been closed to date once we can start reopening, but also give that opportunity for the retail teams to build on that click and collect purchase and put together some recommendations for that interaction as well. I think marketing spend is going to be a key focus. Certainly, I'm sure every CFO is going through every line at the moment looking for cost savings. I know I have been. And cash flow is going to come under some pressure for most businesses over the coming months. So I'd really be looking back at your marketing investment, whether that's paid search, social, retargeting, and saying, what's going to give me the greatest return? And do I need to, over the coming months, continue with some of my BAU activity, or am I better off putting that money into some tactical campaigns to drive a bigger result for the business? Because cash is going to be king as we move through this phase. Also looking at leveraging what behavioural changes have occurred in the last few weeks and analysing whether they're going to continue for your brand. The amount of people that have now done video chat, like our good selves today, but across all generations, where it was something that people had never even, who had heard of House Party up until 6 weeks ago? Certainly not I, but maybe I'm a bit old. So I think video chat's something we're looking at. How do we bring that into not only our business more from a corporate perspective, but how do we build it into our customer relationships and offer that both through our live chat facility, but then moving into virtual clienteling as well as we move through this phase. And then I think it's about leveraging the store stock. And what's been evident that if anyone didn't have infrastructure in their ERP to be able to access this stock during this crisis, there's millions of dollars sitting behind shuttered doors that could be helping drive your e-commerce revenue at this stage. So definitely looking at what steps can be taken. Is there opportunity to pull forward some of those projects in the current climate? And then I think the sort of final piece is, during this time, your brand may have acquired some new customers through the pure e-commerce channel. And what are you doing, and what tools do you have available to you to really prompt a second purchase out of those customers in the coming months, so that they become a long-term customer of your brand, rather than a COVID fling where they've bought something and you never hear from them again. So I think look, there's a lot to be done now, and days are very full of trying how to drive immediate results, but also how do we all survive this crisis, and how do we make sure that we still stay true to our brand, stay true to our customers, but be able to deliver a return that's going to, see brands and the retail industry thrive in, in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about adjusting to a new normal. I know everybody just got a great overview of my Slack channels and stuff then. First time moderator, can you tell, guys? As we continue on the theme of the new normal, Nick, what are you seeing from a platform perspective, and what are you anticipating to see next?
Yeah, look, it's always a pleasure following from Shannon. So I'll try and do my best to keep up. But look, I think what's happening next, it's pretty hard to predict the weather, and it's also a little bit difficult to try plan that far ahead. But I think what we can see is what will be next is really understanding what you already have that can be leveraged. And look, again, that goes back to data and your database, which is really key in identifying who, what, and where you should be reaching out to your customer more than ever. And I will be a little bit brief on this, and I know it will be obvious, so I apologise for saying it. But look, understanding those short and long-term goals and what you can do to prepare, for when this is over, or even if it extends longer than it already is. But I think if we jump back to subject matter and a better response than mine, I might actually throw it back to Shannon.
Well, I think Danny's there eager to
Sorry.
I'll let Danny jump in, and then I'll follow Danny this time, which is always a hard task.
People that know me have never seen me keep my mouth shut for this long.
Danny, I'm sorry. I thought I'd just see and test the waters there, but I'll be quiet now.
No, that's totally fine. I think it was. I liked what Shannon said earlier about the idea of collective commerce is the way that the brand should be treating their e-commerce and broader strategy. I think from the customer's point of view, I'm using the term intentional commerce, that idea that people will only be engaging with brands that they really care about and going through purchasing journeys that they really want to do, as opposed to the whole just browsing or just buying a whole lot of stuff for the sake of buying. I think the thing to think about what's next is for all these retailers that have currently got limited or closed stores, you're currently a pure play online retailer accidentally overnight, and then you're about to wake up over the next weeks or months a huge store network that, if you're a pure play retailer, would be years worth of projects. Like, it's something that would take a long time for a pure play to go and do. Now that you are reopening store 1, 2, 3, 4, 100, 200, what's the role of that store now? You've got a real opportunity to change the role that store plays, where customers can only discover and buy online right now, and they're about to go back out to the store network and start having these other experiences that extend their online experience. I think the worst thing that could happen here is we go back to the way things were. So I think for some brands, as they, I've seen some articles talking about stores never reopening again. So some stores within the network, they might use this as an example or an opportunity to say, well, that store never really worked for us or worked for the network. Let's close that on the way back up. So that consolidation, I think, is going to be, if done well and if done for the right reasons, will be a really important thing. To Shannon's point about the COVID flings, I think it's a great term. But this idea that even your existing customers, I wouldn't be surprised if many brands, if they did the analysis, would see that that the number of customers that have ever bought online with them should be doubled. There should be all their existing customers that have happily bought from stores for decades are now buying online for the first time with the brand. So your count of multi-channel customers should be a lot bigger. And if you can now have that customer shop with you 24/7, whereas for the previous years they could only ever buy in store when you were open to serve them, then that's a huge opportunity. So for next, to sort of adding a theme to what Shannon was talking about, it's really just providing utility, provides new ways for the customer to engage with the brand to get their jobs done, so that they can actually go through the process of of buying in these new ways that they've all had to learn. And for many customers, now that they've learnt them, they'll be keen to keep using these new techniques in discovering and buying products. And then when the stores become available to them again, that can just make those new experiences better. It's not going to detract from them.
And I think
so based
also
on that sort of idea.
Yeah, Danny, I mean, I agree. I think there's a big shift that's occurred, and that's kind of forced a change in behaviour, and they've had really no other choice, so they've had to adopt it to continue, and a lot of those barriers that marketers or e-com specialists have been trying to break down have kind of been done for us overnight. And I think that it's really analysing that behaviour and digging into some of the metrics that are available to each of the businesses and saying, okay, so what's changed in the last 6 weeks, versus maybe 3 months ago, and what are the key things that have really changed for us as a business, and will they continue into the future? And I think that's understanding what's a permanent shift and what's just a moment in time, and being able to analyze that, sit down, that, not go down a bit of a kind of crazy rabbit warren because it's something that was very specific to this period in time and won't have the ongoing shift. I think also what's next, you also need to look at your competitive set and see what they have been doing and what behaviors have they potentially changed with customers that you may share with them, that these customers are going to expect from brands going forth. And so I think it's very important to not only look at your customer behavior, but look at what your competitors have done during this period, and so that you're not falling behind in terms of your offering to the market as well. And I think what's next is, to the point of this kind of collective commerce is really sitting down with the retail operations people in your business and the marketing and e-commerce people of business, and really pulling out what drives revenue on e-com and what drives revenue in stores, and then understand how you can actually converge those two, and start doing some of those principles that are only online at the moment. And so, for instance, if I take abandoned baskets, that's something that works really well online. Lots of people, derive some good secondary revenue out of that channel. But we don't do anything like that, or most brands don't do anything like that in stores. But in fact, you can do that. You could scan some items into a wish list. I know the Omneo platform does that, and we did that at MJ Bale. But there's these options of thinking differently, instead of it being about an e-commerce channel and a retail channel, just really pulling the two of them together and getting the best of both worlds and creating a new channel, and how that operates and who the contributors are to that.
Yeah, I think thinking about customers, that their customers. Sorry, Tess. I was just saying that the customers they're not going to be no longer just your online customers and your in-store customers and your multi-channel customers. Customers might be online this week, but next week they'll be in-store customers. And I think categorizing people that way is sort of missing the point. But the idea of taking those principles that were seen as an e-commerce specific feature or utility and bringing it to the store and vice versa is hugely important.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a couple of themes there, right? So there's this collective commerce from a business standpoint, where you're breaking down those traditional silos and having a shared dialogue across the business using the tools that you might already have in place, or the information you have at hand through data platforms or whatever. And then there's also the customer perspective as well. They're not going out willy-nilly. If they're going to go out, it's risking their health, and it's an intentional choice, and they're going to be a lot more conscious about the decisions they're making from a retail standpoint. So that probably leads us nicely on to the next topic of function and utility. So Shannon, you mentioned click and collect, abandoned baskets. If we were to dive a bit deeper into what sort of function and utility retailers should be bringing to their customers right now, what do you think that looks like, Danny?
Well, I think leading on from what Shannon's point was before, this idea of being able to replicate the idea of visits and carts and shortlisting is really important. So some of the things that we've talked about with brands are things, especially in apparel, the idea of an express change room. So the idea of being able to put a customer putting things into their wish list online, triggering some sort of communication or booking with the store, so that when they walk into store, all the things that they want to try on, plus anything else that the well-trained store team, using the history of that customer and what they know about the customer to put together a package of things to try on. I know if I go into a menswear retailer, I won't risk just buying things without trying things on, even though I hate trying things on. So just being able to speed up that process, and know that most of the things are going to work for me, and have some other things suggested to me, means that at the end of that very quick process, and I'm not having to go around and work my way through the store in a way that maybe I'm not feeling comfortable doing. Click and collect, we've already talked a lot about. I think the idea, what is click and collect? It's not just a box in the corner or a bag of clothes that the staff member doesn't really want to help you with. It's really a great experience for upsell and cross-sell and all those other things. Appointments and concierge. I think the idea of a concierge that can start online and finish in store, or leveraging your store teams to actually be concierges. I mean, we've talked a lot to brands that have stores over on the over in Perth, over in a different time zone, that are still online and working at the time when all the Eastern Seaboard's getting into their 7 p.m. To 11 p.m. at night peak online shopping time. So get them online on live chat and ask the customer, how can I help? Especially for all these customers that have never bought online, can you create some utilities where there's a guided sales process? Can I put the things in the cart for you? All you need to do is put your credit card in. We'll make sure that gets to you. Do you want to see what this looks like on someone else? I'll find an Instagram shot for you. So anything you can do to really help the customer get through the purchase process. And it doesn't have to be technology, just use your humans. You've got plenty of humans probably available to you right now that you could release onto your customers to help them through this process. Repurchasing and subscription options, or just having the way for customers to look at what they've purchased in the past and go, I like this shirt, I need another one, maybe in a size up or a size down. Now that I've been stuck at home eating probably too much food, I might need to go a size up. So just repurchase in a new size, like nice little one-click repurchase of things that you can already see that I've liked. Virtual try-on, so the idea that people can see what things look like. I know I've seen a lot of sort of gimmicky sort of 3D renders of clothes. Virtual clothes is probably one of the hardest things to do. But they said that people would never buy clothes online 10 years ago as well. So I think people are now more open to trying new things, but also having more models of different sizes, really leaning heavily on user-generated content. So I can see that this fit model that's sitting there on the Rodd&Gunn website, someone that looks as buff as maybe Nick does, but maybe underneath that I can see some user-generated content under the hood that's more of people of different sizes that might match my body type, and I can feel much more comfortable in saying, oh, that's going to work for me. And the last thing I'd add from a utility point of view is just making sure that your customer service teams are the heroes in your current operation, and that pretty much every day they should be coming back to the broader business and going, here are the top 3 trends, the top 3 issues that customers are loving and maybe not loving so much about our entire brand operation. Can the business help fix this? Because our customers, a good portion of them today, found that this thing was an issue, and if we can fix that and make that go away tomorrow or as soon as possible, that will be great. So if you're not actively responding, if your customer service teams aren't rolling up the top 3 issues of the day, then you're missing a pretty big opportunity to pivot daily or weekly and making sure that you're being everything that your customer needs you to be. I think they're the sorts of features that I'd be focusing on right now, sort of really adding that utility to the customer. Maybe to you, Nick.
Yeah, look, Danny, exactly to your point, right? Consumers are adapting very, very quickly to the new world, and I think in turn retail certainly needs to adapt quickly to essentially cater a customer experience to a lot of new people who may not have been online first shoppers. So that means really also reaching out to consumers on every channel that they can and every touch point, to have the right to have an interaction with them and a conversion. Look, I really like what you said there about the call center as well. Look, something else that's certainly popped up has been acquisition budgets, and look, certainly a lot have been cut, and some some marketers are really left with very little or no spend, and there are a couple of sides of this. So look, the reality is, again, I'll go back to the point previously, but those customers that you have in your database already, look, you've got their data, you know who they are, you know when they bought and how often they purchased. So again, it really, and on your points too of having that siloed data, it's really consolidating or about consolidating and getting that data in the right place. So again, you can execute quickly when you see an opportunity, also while using less resources and less time. And I'll jump back to that time piece again, but I do want to jump on the point of those new consumers. So new consumers, Shannon, you said it perfectly. We need to ensure that they just aren't a transaction and that you can create that repeat purchase. So you have the right to essentially call them a customer. Otherwise, look, we're going to have a lot of first-time buyers or buyers from the COVID fling. But I'll just jump back to that time issue. And look, each day is going to have its new challenges. We all know that. We've all been through that so far, and I'm sure that will continue for the short term. But the best way to maneuver around this is certainly agility. And I think the more time that you can get back in your day, it's certainly going to be a lot easier. So look, I think making the right investments to reduce time constraints is key. I shouldn't do, but I will promote that we actually have a webinar over in our London office that we'll certainly send some invites to that a little bit later. But I think taking a look at those priorities and being able to determine how you can save time and get more time back in your day with those different functions will help you utilize that time better in the day. But Shannon, I don't know, you've got a few priorities, or you've thought of a few priorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had a couple of projects kind of in play. I think what this crisis has highlighted is a reprioritization of many projects, and with potentially a bit more focus on driving revenue quickly, and also turning stock into cash as well. So look, to Danny's point, I think the customer service piece is going to change. How it's kind of been and how it will be moving forward is going to be a huge change. We introduced 24/7 customer support utilizing our global store network a couple of years back, and it has been hugely well received by our customer base, because a lot of our online customers are actually shopping at night, when traditional customer service teams have sort of gone home. But you've also got this store network of people that potentially over coming months aren't going to be as busy as they once were, with foot traffic potentially declining. So in terms of getting better value, is there an opportunity to utilize more of those store teams to cover those live chat and customer service hours, and rediverting your customer service wage budgets to introducing nighttime support from those teams? So I think we're certainly looking at the customer service play with our Zendesk product, and looking at, well, what other features are available in Zendesk. I think when I went on the other day, there's like 137 apps that can plug into a Zendesk, and I got lost in the hours going through seeing what all these things were. But I think it's looking at what platforms you've already got and saying, rather than trying to go out and necessarily buy all these new platforms, is there something that are actually already available to me that I can start getting a better result, or start improving the customer experience? So I think that we've also been doing a clienteling test with a partner in the US. We'll be looking at rolling that out to more doors over the coming months across our network. And I think the other aspect of our customer service teams is making sure they've got all the data on the customer, and that they can actually have an informed conversation with that customer and really understand what their behavior has been with the brand and how they've interacted in the past. Another area that, and to facilitate that is obviously the CDP project that we've got going at the moment with Emarsys to launch, which will allow us to, as Nick said, leverage our database, but really surface that information to a broader team and be able to empower our store staff both in the store and with that information, and enrich those experiences for the customer, but also surfacing that information to our customer service teams so that they have a better understanding of the customer, as I mentioned. So on top of that, I think the closure of stores has really highlighted the need to have a far more true omni-channel function in the business. We offer click and collect. We have ship from warehouse to customer for items that aren't available in particular stores, but we'd already been working with our ERP partner to look at how we can escalate that further. And I think that's certainly come front and center, that the whole endless aisle ship from store, and additional fulfillment options that come with that really need to be fast-tracked as we move into the new world, or the new normal, because we still have a reasonable sized store network, and we need to leverage that stock and leverage that humans that are in the stores in terms of our team members, so that they're playing a part in the recovery as well. And I think that's a really important part, is making sure that it is a collaborative and a kind of collective, as I say again, working through, because there'll be many retail staff that are going to stand on shop floors, when stores start reopening in the coming weeks, and they're probably going to get 3 customers a day in some instances. And so I think the role of customer service, the role of e-commerce, and bringing the 3 kind of teams together can help the morale of those retail staff members, that they are engaging with customers, maybe video chat, or maybe live chat, and they're actually part of a broader business, rather than maybe being in a smaller store that has been affected by the crisis, and there's a lot less traffic around, because it can be pretty grim standing on a shop floor and no one coming through, no one coming through the door, because the malls haven't returned to their traffic yet.
Absolutely. So I think it's safe to say we now have some pretty good guidance and overarching strategies. We've got collective and intentional commerce, got some really good ideas about what sort of initiatives should be front of mind at this time and moving forward. But it's one thing to implement all of this functionality, it's another thing to measure it. So for those going through this rapid change and exploring all of these new capabilities, what metrics are important to hold on to from the old world, and what metrics do they need to start paying less attention to? Danny?
Yeah, I think measurement and reporting has always been one of those things that's either what everyone talks about or what no one talks about. I think in e-commerce, or even in retail, I think the conversion rate is one of those numbers that's really been front and center, outside of revenue obviously, but the conversion rate for the particular experience, whether that be a store or an e-commerce site, has been pretty much the number that a lot of people spend a lot of time on. I think, back to Shannon's point about the idea that you've got a store team that might be participating in the retail experience for customers, but maybe not a whole lot of customers face to face. I think the concept of attribution needs to be thought through a lot deeper. I think the idea about and we see this a lot in advertising, but I'd like to see it more in the primary experiences for customers and the brands. The idea that if I visit a website today and then I buy from a store tomorrow, then the website needs to get some attribution to that, and vice versa. If I get served by a staff member either through live chat or physically in store, and then I go and buy myself online, make a purchase later, then that staff member should get credit for the fact that they were part of that sale. How you collect that data and link it all together is the challenge. You're gonna need to find some tools that can do that. But really, that's the real opportunity, where you're working on where you can start measuring the sale that might happen a day or a week later. You can link that to the effort, to the experience that generated it in the first place. I know that if e-commerce budgets and feature investments were linked to the total number of sales that were specifically generated from a website experience, even if it was a store sale that was the channel that the customer ended up buying through, I think people would be investing a lot more in their e-commerce engines than what they have been. Also linking to customer satisfaction, I think the other big thing to look at outside of the raw numbers is if you're not measuring satisfaction on an online ordering experience or an in-store experience, if you're not getting your best customers to tell you in an ongoing, everyday kind of way how happy they are with the service they're getting from your brands, and linking incentives to staff and to channels and to retail managers and to e-commerce managers, linking their KPIs to the satisfaction of customers, because that's a leading indicator. Revenue is a trailing indicator. It's telling you, it's a post-mortem. It's telling you what's happened in the past. It's not telling you what's likely to happen in the future, whereas CSAT is a future indicator of potential success, of potential loyalty. So I think we want to see brands spending a lot more time collecting and analyzing the customer satisfaction of any experience where they can. It needs to be done cleverly, and you need to make sure you're not annoying the customers in asking these questions. And where possible, I'd be avoiding any of those anonymous type satisfaction collection systems. I think giving you feedback is a right and a privilege of a known customer. So that known customer should feel like that response is connected to their account and part of their experience with you. Wherever possible, I think getting to a position where there should be no accidental visitors or accidental sales, back to that intentional commerce idea. Customers should be logged in. They should be on your website as Danny Phillips, not as visitor 75362. And even when I walk into a store, rather than asking who they are when they come up to the POS with their wallets open, they should you should be asking the question, have you shopped with us before? Let me pull up your profile when they walk through the front door. And if people are booking appointments, then you'd already know who they are before they arrive. So getting to that idea of measuring your logged in or identified customers, and measuring how many of our visits are to known customers or our interactions, I think is something that I want to see a lot more brands spending time on. Hopefully it'll be a low number and they'll realize that, well, hey, we're not even asking our customers to log in into the website. Why would they? There's no feature on the website that encourages customers to log in or be known. Well, maybe you should add some, member-only collections, pre-sale, pre-order, member-only pricing, all that sort of stuff. So think about why you would give that to your customer, and then you can measure it. We know that a disproportionate amount of your high profit sales and your revenue comes from a very, very small number of customers. You need to make sure that the features, the strategies, all the things we've talked about in the previous sections are disproportionately targeted to that very small number of customers that generate most of your revenue. Don't try to serve the bottom feeders, even though you need them to pick up some of that old stock. The experiences that customers are wanting from you as a brand are you define them as customers and they define you as a brand. So really, spend a lot more time servicing and solving for your best customers. So make sure every report that you've got, you can slice it by my best customers, the best and then the rest, and before you start making big judgment calls about a particular number or a metric. That's my sort of take on it. I mean, Shannon, you've probably got a few more specific things. What are you looking at from a KPI metric point of view?
I think certainly there needs to be a rethink of attribution, and I think if you talk about Facebook Manager or any other kind of digital player, they've got very sophisticated ways of telling you that their activity is helping to contribute to a sale at some point through the journey. I think retailers need to take a page out of their book and start to figure out how we can do that as well. And I think that will help joining the e-com teams and the retail teams. But I also think when it comes to metrics, you can drown in KPIs and metrics, because everyone can come up with new metrics, and before you know it, people are spending more time populating spreadsheets with KPIs than truly discussing what the outcomes of the business are and what's important. Yeah. So I think for me, it's always been measure what matters. You can create lots of KPIs and goals, but how much control do you actually have over them? And so it's really starting to go through all the metrics that are available to you and saying, okay, so what can I actually influence here? Or is this just a byproduct? And I'm just going to keep putting on a report. What truly matters? I think, look, some standard metrics that everybody uses today, are good to measure your overall brand strategy, whether it's your merchandise offering or pricing, that can influence conversion and repeat purchases. For me, the brand health's a very important one as well, because that will drive a lot of those kind of standard metrics as well. And so, I'm always interested to know how many new customers are coming to the website. At a store, what percentage of customers in stores are, say, a loyalty member? And people can kind of say, yeah, I'm at 99% as loyalty members, which is great in terms of having so many known customers come through your store, but also scary in the fact that you're clearly not attracting new people into the business and to your brand. So I think it's really understanding what are you trying to achieve as well in terms of what makes your brand successful, and are there metrics that you can use to measure that and to monitor that to make sure that the efforts that you're doing are actually contributing to what matters and what's going to make the brand successful. And I think, there's a lot to do there, particularly if we move into a more collective approach to retailing. But I think don't get so many that it takes a whole day just to populate a weekly report. I think it's a death trap by many. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, and I'd certainly love to find out what you both think, Danny and Shannon. But I think, look, how important are the metrics around average order value, units per transaction, purchase frequency? Firstly for recovery, and then taking a look next at profitability.
For me, purchase frequency is hugely important, but again, it depends on your brand, because some brands will be quite happy with 3 customers a year, 3 visits per year, because they're a high value customer and the ATV is high. Whereas if you're maybe a more fast fashion retailer, you'd be horrified by only 3 visits a year, because your model is built on constant newness. And so I think the combination of those KPIs for me really lead to what's the annualized value of that customer, and really breaking down, who's actually driving the most revenue for your brand for the whole year, not just one moment in time, because that can certainly, take people down the wrong direction and start making changes to your overall business, because it's based on a singular view rather than a 12-month or an 18-month view. I mean, it really does depend on what you're selling. But I do think they're important, but it's the combination of some KPIs that give a much more powerful insight than just 1 or 2 in isolation.
And I think adding to that, if those averages can be skewed, into useless numbers, I think the purchase frequency one, I've seen some pretty poor examples where someone goes 100,000 transactions divided by 50,000 unique customers that transacted equals a frequency of 2. Or most analysis ends up equaling like a 1 point something number, and that included people that joined the brand yesterday. So asking what their frequency, and then people walking around saying our customers shop 1.3 times a year, which isn't true, because of the people that joined 3 days ago, they haven't had a chance to tell you how many times they plan to purchase. So being very careful about making decisions about entire cohort roll-ups of things like purchase frequency or average order value. First things first, only include people that have been with you for a year, to give a true sense of what that number really is. But also slice, if you are going to look at average order value, units per transaction, purchase frequency, do it for your best 10%, the next 40%, and your bottom 50% as well, because they're completely different customers. So analyze them as part of cohort groups, because the last thing you want to do is let your bottom 50% of customers pull down your averages and sort of use them to sort of tar with the same brush these top 10% of customers that are completely different. I think with metrics to be really careful of correlation versus causation. If you've ever looked at Freakonomics podcast, it's a big trap when looking at these sorts of metrics. I've seen people say, we use a buy now, pay later service called something, and people who it's caused the ATV or the average order value of people who use buy now, pay later is higher. So therefore, introducing that particular feature to our website has increased the average order value for those purchases, when what was really happening is it's a correlation, not a causation. People who choose to spend more in an average order will choose to use that payment method, is probably more likely the case in most circumstances. So I've seen plenty of strategies or choices being made on what people thought was a causation effect in their metrics, but really was just a correlation. that members spend more than non-members. It's not really, it's a correlation. People who spend more will choose to be members over people who spend less is probably more the case. Being a member didn't necessarily make them spend more. It was a correlation. It's more nuanced than that, but I think I've seen plenty of examples where people have fallen into those traps. What other ones you got for us, Nick?
Yeah.
No, I think we might be running out of time. So
Oh yeah.
I've got plenty more, and I'm sure people will have plenty more questions. But I'm sure that we can kick another one of these series off because I certainly know the content. It's fantastic. I'm running out of paper from all the notes I'm writing down, guys.
Yeah, so if people do have questions, feel free to add them into the chat now, because we'll allocate some time at the end to answering those. But you know, we've delved into some really meaty stuff there around measuring your initiatives and measuring them proportionally to the value that those customers provide to your business. So there's a lot to take in for any retailers watching, and a lot to make sense of. How do they prioritize what to do next in accelerating their e-commerce evolution? How do they start making the shift? Shannon, I might go to you first.
If they're still working in an office, I would be finding out CFO's favourite coffee is. And delivering one to him piping hot every morning, because he is going to be the master more than ever of what departments progress and what initiatives are put on hold and what initiatives get green lights. So first, number one, make the CFO your new best friend. And then I think it's really understanding, okay, what's the expectations of the business? What sort of sales are we trying to achieve over the next 12 months? Are we in, as a result of the crisis, are we in survival mode? And do I need to adjust my thinking and my logic and my language in the organization to reflect the mode that the business is in, so that I don't seem kind of irrelevant or slightly delusional if you're pitching a major new project and everyone's just fighting to keep alive. Is there actually a growth opportunity because of your product or your service is going to be one of the winners that comes out of the crisis in the short term? And then I think it's about pitching your idea of wanting to work as a new team and building that collective group and start to build out an agenda and start to run some workshops on how can e-commerce marketing and retail operations and IT work closer together to deliver that more collective approach to the customer. And then I think it's making sure that isn't just a heads of department conversation as well. I think once you've got a shape of what you want to achieve in your business, invite more people into that group, or run separate workshops with some store managers, or potentially some new managers to the business and some long-serving managers to the business. And I'd really mix up your pool of talent that you're going to use to start shaping what your plan is. And then really it's about building out that plan, understanding what are the key initiatives that you need to undertake, prioritizing those based on which ones are going to drive a revenue increase quicker in the current climate, and maybe pushing some of the others for later down the track. But I definitely think it's about communication, kind of melting down some of the silos, I guess, and making sure that the e-commerce and the retail operations team, are really truly starting to have communication. And something that I've done, in the past is I've taken my e-commerce teams into stores, and and actually, because they never go into stores, they're always in e-com, and get them to talk to the best manager about how they interact with their customer, how do they sell to their customer, what are some of the barriers to them converting a sale. And we've been able to take some really great insights from that experience and then pull that back into the website as well. So I think the more collaboration and the more open, transparent communication between these departments will be the better and a great place to start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look,
I think everyone should spend time in a store.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. And look, sorry, mate. I think, look, just on the back of that, and you absolutely nailed it, Shannon. I think something that we've been very, very much focused on with our customer base is certainly working on a common objective that we both share. And that's across the business, that's with partners, that's with other tech partners, you know, the whole lot. I think simplifying that, it certainly gives everyone transparency on what you're trying to achieve, and it's also making sure that it's measurable. That unified approach, also requires that unified team. So, look, that's certainly what's been successful at the moment. But Danny, I know that you were jumping in to share some of your thoughts.
Oh, look, I've just got three things. The variations on the same theme, but realign your reporting lines and your KPIs to focus on customer value creation rather than channel performance would be number one. Number two, model all your interaction funnels with pessimistic and optimistic assumptions on the take up and the value, so you can actually put some real numbers into it. And lastly, just try things quickly. Get the right people on your internal and your external teams, your agency partners, your vendors, to pilot things. Use elegant hacks where you can, and then replace them with best of breed platforms when you've got the time and the budget to do so. But you can do a lot with what you've got, and once you've proven the value, buy the real tool that can let you scale it quickly. Everything can be done now. Like, the answer is always yes. As a brand, it's your job to find out what it is that's worth doing and saying, can agency partner, internal team, vendor X and Y, can I do this? I want to do this. The answer will be yes, but you need to be very clear and articulate in what you want to do, because it's what your brand and what your customer expects your brand to be doing. That would be my take on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much, guys. I'm just conscious of time. We might quickly jump into Q&A. You guys got access to the chat there. You can have a look in, see if there's anything that you feel
I don't think we can see the chat. I don't think we can see the chat on our side, Tess. So maybe if you just throw one or two. I think we've only got like 1 minute left. So you pick one question that you think is worth answering.
Question here from Phil. He's asked, the other side of the e-commerce is logistics. The current crisis has revealed that the stress and resulted in big delays. How can a retailer take more control of the logistics in our market, which is dominated by AusPost? Shannon, is that something you feel like you can comment on?
I wish I knew the answer. But look, yeah, we're super frustrated with. I mean, look, we're in unprecedented times, and for Australia Post to be getting more parcels than the week before Christmas, there's no one could have planned for that. So I think certainly once stores reopen, I think the click and collect option and really promoting that to customers will be a great way to reduce that friction in the customer journey that's currently happening. We've certainly experienced delays being an Australia Post customer as well for our customers after some big promotional events over the couple of weeks. It's a tough one, but I can't see a really answer other than a global competitor coming into the market and offering an alternative service. But we're a big country, so it takes time to get things around. But yeah.
Certainly one we could spend a lot of time delving deeper into, but unfortunately we're out of time. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time today, and everybody at home for attending. I hope you got a lot of value out of this, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.